Hey, good evening. Welcome to Romager Radio. This is Carl, 717-916-5189. 717-916-5189 if you want to get here on the air. Happy to hear what you have to talk about. Obviously, I've thrown a couple topics out there. Seems to be a lot of opinions. So, NASCAR, right? Although it's not really NASCAR, somebody's already pointed out. But Stewart, this driver from NASCAR, was on another dirt track, had a little accident. A driver was hit, and of course people are already saying all kinds of craziness. What got my attention, I was reading on the internet already, people are saying, well, I could tell by the way his car moved that he accelerated into the driver. I've watched the video a couple times. I can tell you what I think I see. So if one of you guys wants to get on the air and talk about it, I will be happy. I'm not going to even tell you what I think until one of you tells me what you think. I don't want to set the stage, so to speak. I don't want to hear, yeah, I agree with you or I disagree with you. I want to hear what you think, and then I'll agree with you or disagree with you. It's my prerogative. But if you want to know what I think, call in 717-916-5189. Again, 717-916-5189, and we'll get you live on the air. And we'll see what you think you saw, if in fact you actually watched the video. Probably, if I know some of you guys and gals, you'd be more than happy to talk about it without actually watching it. Hey, we've all done that. Now, Ebola, of course, they think now they traced it back to a 2-year-old baby. That thing's just streaming and steaming and working its way around the continent of Africa and maybe working its way over here. Of course, we talked a little bit about that last week, but I'm happy to chit-chat a little bit more about the Ebola situation and what I think's going on. I already see a little fight developing here on Facebook. But anyhow, if you're tuning in for the first time, of course, you can get it on Spreaker, which is Spreaker.com. I encourage you to join and follow the show on Spreaker because it becomes a very efficient way to follow any postings. Because, as you know, I'm on every Sunday right now at 8 p.m. and every Wednesday at 8 p.m. These are our summer hours. Sometimes we're here, sometimes we're not, right? But these are the summer hours. And what that basically means is you're going to get us every Sunday, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. But I've been meaning to do, and I will be doing, some occasional broadcasts that are sort of, ad hoc whenever I feel like it. And if somebody wants to discuss a topic, if you're really dying to jabber and do a podcast about something that you want to promote or just get out there, feel free to contact me, and I'd be happy to get you on the air. Caller, you're on the air.
Hey, what's going on, Carl? GG Fizzle, what's going on over there today?
Good, man. What's up?
Oh, I'm on the green side of the grass. I can't complain. Wanted to give you a quick call, talk a little bit about Ebola, talk a little bit about some Tony Stewart, and see what's going on out there. So, yeah, Ebola's here in the U.S.
Yeah.
And
well, it came here on purpose, though, right? I mean, we brought it in under controlled scenario.
Right. With quotations around it. Because this is now, keep in mind, this is the same people that, just a few months ago misplaced other types of diseases, and they had found were in other spots where they shouldn't have been. Am I correct?
Yeah, they had a little problem with anthrax, polio.
Right. So I mean, yeah, they're the best people to handle the situation.
And I talked about this the last time I did the show. I mentioned the Andromeda strain, which was a Michael Crichton book. And in there, it's the hubris, right? They bring this stuff into this specialized facility and ends up eating its way through the rubber seals. And despite all their high technology, they're not able to control it. So anyhow, you may be onto something there.
Listen, you know what my problem is with this? Everybody has a price. That's my problem. Everybody has a price, so you're going to go ahead and you're going to put some stuff in there. But yet they're talking about terrorists here in America, and they're doing terrorist recruiting here in the United States and then on the internet and this and that, da da da. But you know what? Everybody has a price.
Are you
saying
even the NSA hires guys like Edward Snowden?
Oh, of course. Everybody has a price. So you're working at the CDC, and so you get a little offer for something, and Ebola becomes a little loose. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I worry about that, especially in a bad economy. It's just a bad thing. I think that Ebola is a man-made disease. I don't think it's made by eating whatever you were talking about. I didn't hear exactly what you were talking about. It was from eating something you said?
Bushmeat.
Bushmeat. Oh, gosh.
That would be...
There would have been a lot of Ebola here in the 70s then, wouldn't there?
We're talking about animals that are caught in the jungle.
Oh, that kind of bush. Never mind.
I knew where you were going with that.
Listen, no, but seriously though, I think it's a man-made disease. I think that it's put into effect because that spot of the world, I mean, let's face it, they overpopulate all the time. And if I'm right, that's, I believe, the same area that the AIDS virus first came out of as well, the same area of Africa. And my opinion is that they, because you know how I feel about the government, they do their testing over there, and they, kill them people off. And as a population control, it's not going to get out of hand. There's going to be some people that get Ebola. It's going to be scarce. They're going to send them the medicine over to Africa. I've seen already on the news. It's going to kill some people over there internationally. But if you stay in the country and you're not traveling and, hopefully you're not around people who are traveling to this part of the country or come in contact with those who have, you should be okay. It's my opinion. I'm not scared of it. It is what it is. I'm not going to, lose sleep over Ebola, if that makes sense.
Right. So you're not really worried about it.
No, that's not. I'm not. That's to me, it's an international disease. It has its way here, but I really don't think that in the end it's going to become too much of anything.
You're a true American.
I really think that it's a cover up for what's going on right now. They're talking about that because they don't want to talk about the truth or let people know about the situation in Iraq and Russia over there. Notice I haven't seen on the news about how the Russians have flown 10 times with their nuclear bomber over to Alaska and down the coast of California already, and we've had to scare them off 10 times in the past 16 days.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure, have you seen that on the book? Have you seen that going around?
Well, you're right. People are being very quiet about that.
People are being very quiet about it. And, you don't hear anything except for telling Russia to, not do nothing in the Ukraine. Meantime, we're going to focus on Iraq and ISIS and a religious war. Now, this is becoming a religious war, okay, because they're killing people for their religious beliefs, ISIS is now.
Right.
So at this point, it's a religious war that we're getting involved with to do what? To defend Christianity. So, I don't know. End of times? World War III? Nuclear war in the making? I mean, I don't know. We've talked about this in the past.
Well, the World War III thing is definitely on my radar with us bombing ISIS and with Russia basically saying that they're not going to stand down and they're not worried about us.
Right. And Putin, I wouldn't put it past him to do something dirty. You know what I mean? Just to be like, Russia is a big country. You know what I mean? I'm scared of Russia. I ain't going to lie to you. I'm scared of Russia. And I think if anybody in this world that would do anything to us, I really believe it would be them.
Well, I actually was a little miffed at somebody's comment on Facebook where they made the supposition that we don't have anything to fear from Russia. And I was kind of like, boy, you live in a very simple world.
Yeah. I mean, you really do, because in my, I mean, you can think about Kim Jong-il over there, or, the North Koreans. You can think about the Japanese, the Chinese. Them people stand to themselves. They're more worried about economics, and they're worried about that type of thing, and still in that type of stuff. They're not into war.
Gigi, what do you think about this NASCAR crash? I call it NASCAR.
Now, here we go. NASCAR. Yeah. Well, it's fine. We can call it a NASCAR crash. My first thing is, listen, if I'm Tony Romo, okay, and I made it to the NFL, there's no damn way I'm going to go play a game of college ball one time on the Thursday night. Do you see what I'm saying? Because dirt track racing is like amateur racing.
Right.
Okay, let's be honest. It's amateur racing. We got the Willows Grove out here and watch it on the weekends if you want to. And it's more or less an amateur sport. Why, when you're a big-time driver in NASCAR and you have a race even the next day, or you out at a dirt track race you could have got hurt at? Well, you have sponsors and you have all that stuff.
This guy, right, though, he's already kind of, I mean, he's pretty major in NASCAR. Doesn't he kind of got ownership in a team and the whole nine?
Well, yeah, he's won a lot of championships. Like, I'm not real familiar. Like,
I don't follow it exactly.
I know who races because I watch Sports Center. So, like, I know it from that, but right. I don't watch races.
Picked it up on
you know what I mean?
So yeah. But let me tell you what's interesting to me is, of course, and just to turn the topic completely on its head, when Seal was signed with Sony, okay, I think it was Sony Records, they put a clause in there that he couldn't ride motorcycles because some of his scarring is, of course, from one of his many motorcycle crashes.
Correct.
So while he was under contract to do 7 albums, he had a no motorcycle clause. I have a feeling that NASCAR let this guy get away with this because of his multi-position that he held in the organization, multiple positions, and also because he ran it as kind of a shtick, like, hey, I'm NASCAR, but I'm not too fancy to come out to the dirt track with you boys.
And I get that, and that in a way to me is understandable. But however, if you watch the footage, it looked like to me that kid must have been getting at him and was because if you look at it, Tony Stewart clipped him. Right. Okay, he swung out and he clipped the guy. Now, so obviously they're battling right there. The kid was getting to him, and it could have been there's more that we didn't see the whole race.
If you watch
you have and you have a chance as that kid to beat Tony Stewart. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right. If you watch the clip, okay, and I did watch.
Did you see the one I posted to you earlier?
Yes, I watched that.
Okay,
and I noticed that the vehicle takes a little sway, but I feel like that sway is when the kid's going under his tire, which would take the traction off that tire, which is why the other tires, I don't think he actually tried to swing out. I mean, I don't think he tried to ram into the kid when you see the car fishtail a little bit. I think that's actually from the impact itself.
This is what I put into play, and I thought about that too. But if you listen to the guy that's videotaping, he straight up says he hit him. Like, oh my God, he hit him. Like, it wasn't like, oh my God, it's an accident. He sounded like the guy hit him, like he did it on purpose, the guy that was videotaping it, if you listen to the footage.
Yeah, and it happened so fast, I'm not sure you can actually come to that conclusion, but who knows?
You can't. But here's again, you can't. Guys have gotten out of cars for years. You see it in NASCAR. You've seen it, in other things like that. They get up in their faces. They have these little fights, and that happens for years. So what's going to come out of it? You can't get out your vehicle unless you're in the pit. You know what I mean? Unless you had an accident, okay, then you can get out of your vehicle, which he did have an accident. But you can't go doing all that unnecessary stuff like that when you got a couple tons of vehicles going around you at whatever speed they may be at the time. You know what I mean? You have to stay at an area that's away from the track. He should have backed up a little bit or something, but I really seriously believe that there was a little beef going on in the race, and I think that Tony Stewart may have not thought he was going that fast and wanted to bump the kid, you know what I mean, just to give him, break his leg or something, just to, you know what I mean, just I'm Tony Stewart type of thing, you know what I mean? Because we don't know who he is personally on the inside. He may have a huge ego.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we can only see what we see on TV, and let's face it, you really don't talk to too many race car drivers to get to know them unless they win the race. You know what I mean? It's not like a football or baseball where they interview and talk to all the players.
Yeah, it's
so you can't really. I don't know the guy about him, but you know what I mean. I can't really. I don't want to judge him either. But the thing is it clearly looks like something that may have possibly been done on purpose, and I think it needs to be investigated. And I think that Tony Stewart needs to be suspended and until further notice. Just like any other sport, whenever there's a tragedy and you're involved with an accident or something like that, you're suspended till further notice, until things come to clear. But I don't know. I think that that's a waste. I'm sad about that. I'm not sad, but it's sad. Period.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
By the way, you watch any of the PGA Championship?
I'm sitting here watching the ladies right now. I am. I'm watching the ladies because it's better than looking at the men. I really don't like golf, but for some reason the women's on. I just got done working, so I had it on golf because it was nice and quiet in the background.
Right.
But So I don't know. What are you liking in the PGA? You see Tiger?
I see Rory McIlroy's about to win it again, huh? He's about to take it away.
They say he could do that. He's pretty close.
He's a minus 15 out of 16 holes. Stenson and Fowler and Nicholson are right up his butt, but they've only got a couple holes left to play, so they got to make their move or they're going to run out of time. By the way, if I didn't have this stupid show to do, would still be watching this with my feet kicked. No, I'm just kidding.
Why is it still 8:00 though?
Yeah, well, you know what? Well, because I ran with 8:00.
Summertime hours or what?
Yeah, I made 8:00 the summertime hour.
Okay.
So
when the kids go back to school, you're going to go back to 7, or?
Yeah, when the weather gets a little rougher, we don't have anything to do. Because you think about a night like tonight, right? I mean, you could just be finishing up on the golf course right now. You could just be coming home from a day's activity. This internet-based radio doesn't really lend itself to travel, so I figured, you know what? We'll just move it back to the hours when people are most likely to be home and settled in for the evening.
That's true. That makes sense. You get more listeners that way.
On the other hand, from the call standpoint, by the way, 717-916-5189, from the call standpoint, this is 6 one, half dozen of another, but maybe helps. From the podcast standpoint, we're getting a lot of people listening by podcast after the show's over, so I guess it doesn't matter what the hell time we do it.
No, I'm glad you had said something about the phone number, because I had went to call in and I went to the website and it don't show your phone number on the website no more.
It does on the front of carlrominger.com.
Oh, on car. I see. I'm on Spreaker. I always listen on Spreaker.
You know what? And here's why: because I didn't put it in the show's title, so it would usually pop up on Spreaker.
Okay.
But I decided I only have so many words to use, and I wanted to go with Nascar, Ebola, and Iraq.
Right. I get what you're saying, because it's weird. I've tried to listen to other shows on there from time to time, and it's like they don't ever have no phone numbers up there to where people call in or nothing like that. But there's a lot of talk shows.
There's a lot of talk shows, yeah.
Yeah, there's there's no phone numbers or nothing, but I just thought I'd ask that since I had you on the line.
If you dig down into the paraphernalia that goes with the shows, like their stuff, but I try to put that phone number right in the title, and probably it was bad of me not to do it this time.
Well, hey, I got through to you because you announced the phone number, so that's a good thing.
All right, my friend. Well, I'm gonna appreciate you calling, and I really appreciate you posting that video, because that gave me a nice quick link to watch it.
Hey, no problem.
And I did read, by the way, that's probably what's coming out of this, is they're already saying that this is going to be the movement to have a rule about getting out of your car. It's going to, DQ you or something in the future.
Right. You're not going to be allowed to get out. Something's going to change about the rules with that or something. Like, it's going to have to.
Yeah, well, you know what? I wouldn't want to get out of my car in a situation like that anyhow. So.
Yeah, it'd be like getting hit in the highway, and you're just going to get out and just start yelling at cars in the middle of the road when they're going by. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, and in that case, it's on pavement on a relatively straight line with people who are trying to go as fast as the car possibly goes. But hey.
Hey, I mean, who am I to judge?
Right, exactly. All right, my friend, thank you for the phone call.
I'll talk to you a little later, Carl. Right, bye-bye.
717-916-5189 if you want to get on the air here. I know some of you might want to call in and tell us a few things, whether you think Tony Stewart is guilty of a crime. It's already started, the drumbeat, the schadenfreude. The schadenfreude is strong in this one, right? All these haters who just want to assume that. I mean, unless the guy comes out and says, I swerved into him and I meant to kill him, I don't really see where this goes, right? I mean, I really don't. But I can imagine that people will be thinking this, claiming, oh my gosh, look what happened. Oh my gosh. Well, I don't really see it that way. I really don't. But hey, once again, what do I know? What do I know? What else do I know? Well, I know that we've started bombing in Iraq, taking out the militants and giving the refugees more time to move. And of course, they showed a video of an old woman with a walker up in the mountains, moving through the mountain path on her walker, as they talked about giving the refugees more time to flee. And I thought, well, they better give them a hell of a lot more time to flee if that's the mode of travel right there, climbing mountain paths with your walker. I don't think the tennis balls will stay on the ends very well in that particular type of terrain. Did we waste all our treasure in Iraq? Did we waste all those lives in Iraq? And now we're back to an occasional bombing, and the place is just decaying into what? Another Somalia, maybe? Another outlying Pakistan area? Don't know. I don't know, but I think the future will tell us. I think the book will eventually be written in Iraq that we wasted a lot of time, money, and energy there. And, of course, all the people who fought there and all the people who supported the people who fought there don't like to hear that. And I obviously always support our troops. But I think we have to, when we're evaluating a fight or a war or something, acknowledge that sometimes maybe we shouldn't have gone somewhere or shouldn't have done something. And there's one or two things on Iraq. Either we should have never gone in, or number two, we shouldn't have left when we did. And that when we left when we did was completely the fault of Bush and Obama, because Obama pulled us out, but Bush actually set the date for the pullout. So they're jointly liable for that one, folks. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, Carl, Iraq is a mess right now.
You think?
And it's a result of policy making from the Bush legacy. The Bush legacy specifically created this dystopia, this absolute shattered presence in Iraq that allows a group so radical like ISIS to rise from the ashes and start genociding at will, almost sarcastically, in the face of national media, because they know it's just gangsterism. It's a gangster state. They're so committed to the idea that their failed state will support their gangster state. It's basically like a cartel running a state, and letting them do whatever they want in the name of a religion that they profess to adhere to. But even anybody who has any notion of Islam knows that the Islam that they're clinging to is absolutely just a necrotized, kind of dilapidated, despicable version of Islam.
It's a very unfortunate set of circumstances in much of the world that religious extremists have hijacked governments, hijacked policy, and in many cases done so both with the aiding and abetting of business interests and less extreme people. I always say, Eric Rudolph blew up a abortion clinic and then survived in the mountains for over 2 years because the local populace supported him. Makes no sense. Nobody should condone those actions, but he got some kind of folk hero status because there were people who were not as extreme as he was religiously, but were willing to turn a blind eye to that kind of religious extremism. And
I agree with that. Yeah, they're right. It's about a certain kind of passivity and tolerance
Yeah, and of radicalization.
And passive support
it's a
for
huge,
the radicalization. Exactly.
Huge problem in the Middle East. And unlike many of our listeners who I'd like to make fun of sometimes, and back when I was on WHP 580 with doing the Durgan show, I was completely convinced of this. A lot of people believe, that all 1 billion Islamic people in the world are just bloodthirsty, But unfortunately, they're like looking at the Westboro Baptist version of Islam and or the, David Koresh versions of Islam and or these very radicalized versions of Islam, which really aren't the norm. You get the more secular Muslims, and
what I find is, there are just as there's evidence for atrocities and kind of philosophy that has become malignant in Christianity in our own country in the last several decades. And there are lots of documentaries about isolated sects and ideologues and groups. Platforms that they embrace in the name of Christianity that mimic.
So let's talk about this for a second. Here's the problem fundamentally, I think. You have the nation state, okay? And so let me ask you a question. What the hell does it mean to be a Pennsylvanian? All right? Can you tell me what it means to be a Pennsylvanian? Well, it means I'm proud to be a Pennsylvanian.
Right.
Well,
I call that the mythology of inheritance.
To hell with those Cornhuskers in Nebraska, and the Jayhawks in Kansas. To hell with them. I'm better because I'm a Pennsylvanian. Well, okay, now we're not really supposed to get too down on the other states. We're supposed to have states' pride, but we're supposed to be American. I'm a patriot. I believe in America and Jesus and da-da-da-da-da. And I believe in the flag, and I believe that America is right, and we will vanquish our... Okay, so that's the nation state, and that's the belief you're supposed to have in your nation state, which is the grouping of individuals. Now... nothing wrong with that per se. It's a very effective way of creating political systems. So go over to the Middle East and talk about a failed or defunct nation state, right? Iraq. A failed or defunct nation state. Well, Pakistan has lots of problems, These are not nations that instill lots of pride in the idea of being a member of the nation state or nationalistic pride. Now, Russia's different, though. Russia, for instance, has strong nationalistic pride, right, that they can use. So if you live in a country like Iraq where there's no nationalistic pride, groups that espouse religious philosophies that are radical but also talk about and interfere with politics and talk about creating a strong, beautiful political entity for a means to an end, attract that adoration of the nation state. So the same way that people become patriots here in the United States and become obsessed with, America and all that is American, and that directs their energies towards supporting the United States. Conversely, in a country where there is no government to respect, no government to rally behind to speak of, or no government to excite the people and keep them focused and create a nationalistic movement, religion fills the gap, which remember, religion was the original political motivator long before you had the nation state. So that's the real danger. It's the breakdown of government, and the breakdown of secular government allows for radical religious sects to thrive in a way that they never can in the United States. They exist here. They don't thrive here the way they thrive in these political vacuums.
But the way that they manifest in a firestorm like Iraq is akin to secular gangsterism, though. Religion has fallen out of it. The radicalism has totally unified them in a spirit of violence, and the end of the goal is power and control of the state, and showboating along the way.
If you can convince, and the other thing, there's definitely prince and castle sort of issues going on in these movements too. You've got these wealthy backers of these movements who engage in all kinds of hedonistic secular activities but then act very pious and have these guys, flying planes into skyscrapers and blowing themselves up and immolating themselves. And we've got Hamas outside of Israel, which is all part of the same problem, using their own civilians, their children, they're sick, they're infirm, and they're elderly as human shields. Because they believe in this strong religious, at a core level, the foot soldiers believe in this strong religious belief that somehow they're going to be rewarded in heaven for all this hardship.
Right, but the leaders prey on that for the people who, probably these are people who spent their adolescence in a state that was just filled with the chaos of the Bush regime war that shattered the state. That's all they know, and now they're growing up basically as sociopaths. It's a pathological, their outlook on life now is solely pathological, and it's probably been instilled in them since basically their early childhood, and that goes back well into the first Iraq War. And then before that, Saddam was ruining the nation anyway and playing power broking with the United States through the U.S. government. So there's just lots of corruption. It all ties back to the U.S., and it's really a shame that the state, because it's full of artists and professionals, musicians, and philosophers who want to be a genuine, realized people acting in a first world way, but they can't because it's torn apart by the sectarian violence.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The answer is it's not going to get better anytime soon, and that area of the world is not going to stabilize anytime soon. But, historically, people make the argument, well, it hasn't been stable in a long time, and it hasn't been. There's historical fights to go back thousands of years. But on the other hand, the problem they're having now, like you say, is people are being raised in an environment where radicalism and war-torn way of life is just the norm, and unfortunately it's a cycle of violence that's not likely to be broken anytime soon, nor may we be the ones who can possibly break it. But strong men, and of course there's no strong women in the Arab culture.
Right. Well, when you're born in an atmosphere of the apocalypse, then it looks like a James Cameron, it looks like the Terminator. I mean, it looks like a post-apocalyptic scenario where you're just running around in skeletal trucks with cannons mounted on them, fighting some machines who are fighting you back, and you relate to them on some level, knowing that you caused them in some way.
Oh, it's a good point. You point that out, talking about machines. I mean, we are, of course, using our drones and our robots, and increasingly, and it's not going to be a matter of time before we have very few soldiers on the ground, and instead we just rain down death from above, or we send in mechanized units. It definitely would be very...
Well, it's just... Well, Carl, I have to have my dinner. I'm having a sandwich, an Ebola and cheese sandwich.
Oh, good. Nothing beats a little Ebola. Yeah.
Yeah. So Lebanon Ebola with cheese. And so I'll let you go, but thanks for the topics tonight, Carl.
All right, my friend. Take care. Yes, my friend Christian actually is theorizing that Tony Stewart's going to run over Obama, then contract Ebola in Mexico while watching Iraqi porn. Now, I've never seen any Iraqi porn, but I would suspect that it's probably not very high quality. In fact, I would suspect that most of the world gets their porn from America. But that's just me being an American-centric individual. It's probably our biggest export. We'll buy all your drugs and we'll export all our porn. Wouldn't surprise me one bit if that's in fact the entire underground economy. 717-916-5189. Again, 717-916-5189. Somebody was asking me about Harrisburg Beer and Cigar, and they were saying, hey, is that a good place? Short answer is, I was it used to be a sponsor when I was on WHP, but I still frequent the joint, and they have a location in Carlisle as well, Carlisle Beer and Cigar. If you get a chance, stop in either one and tell them Carl sent you. We'll just pretend they're still sponsoring the show. and we'll see if that if the word gets back. Maybe I can get him to sponsor this podcast, this exciting podcast. If that's the fact, so you need to, when you stop in at the Harrisburg Beer and Cigar or the Carlisle Beer and Cigar, tell them Carl from the radio sent you, and they'll know it's me. And why not? Maybe I can work out a cigar sponsorship deal again with this show, because I'm getting sick and tired of One Wipe Charlie. I'm not even sure it's One Wipe. I beg to differ, but I don't want to get in a fight with one of my sponsors. 717-916-5189. So I was talking about it, and of course, one of the guys was nice enough to post a YouTube video of this Tony Stewart crash. When you watch it, and when you watch it, okay, you'll see the cars are coming around. They go in a circle, by the way. They go in a counterclockwise circle because that's how they do this sort of thing. And the one car crashes, so you see, and I guess these are sprint cars. I don't know what the hell they are. These little cars with the big wings on top or whatever they are. So he's crashed there for a little while, and you can see him moving around the car, and he jumps out, and he runs out the track, and he's pointing, and he comes down, and he walks, and he comes running right in front of the car, and then boom, he's hit. Like bang. He definitely isn't. I read some descriptions. He was under the car for this period of time or that period of time. I don't see that. It happens so fast. It's absolutely amazing. All right, caller, you're on the air.
You talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you.
Hey, Carl, what's up?
Not too much. How are you?
You don't recognize the voice?
Oh, I recognize the voice. I can prove I recognize the voice.
Okay, prove it.
Can you hear that? I don't know if you can hear that or not. Probably can't hear it on this feed. So if you were listening live, you would know. I would just here. Wait, actually, this is the sound I wanted for you. Definitely fits you. Anyhow, Don, how are you?
You got it. You're just too sharp, Carl.
I am too sharp.
You're very astute. I guess that's part of being a lawyer.
I'm like a spoon.
I wish I could come up with a polysyllabic word to describe your astuteness, but I can't think of one.
So I see you've been rousing up the Facebook people again, and of course they all.
I don't know what you're talking about.
They uniformly hate you, I think. Even your wife is private messaging them asking for help. So I'm not sure what's going on.
That's very likely. Yeah, no.
Of course,
some people just get upset when people disagree with them.
Of course, your wife's Hispanic, so of course all my followers think that she's an illegal immigrant. So she's not getting any traction with them.
Yeah, they would hate me just for that alone.
Right, absolutely.
I wouldn't have to say a word, and that would be the beginning.
Which, by the way, I was thinking about this, and I think I mentioned this before, but I was thinking about this. This kind of made me chuckle a little bit. So the whole theory of why we had to leave Britain, people talk about freedom and whatnot, but the big bugaboo was taxation without representation. I was like, well, under that philosophy, if that was what made England evil and our, Declaration of Independence absolutely necessary, then how the hell does America justify, the time periods where, and I mean, it's a little better now, but for the most part, like for instance, where Puerto Rico was, not a state and had no vote, but they were a protectorate, and therefore you paid some tax and and you had no representation.
They had very fortunate geography, Carl. They happened to be sort of one of the main openings into the Central Caribbean, and at one point was very important because that's where the gold from Colombia and Peru, from the Andes was brought across the Isthmus of Panama through the Caribbean and over to Spain. And they were very, very important. Even up until World War II, because of the Panama Canal, right. They were a defensive position to protect the Panama Canal.
Yeah,
it was very important for the states to own that.
Right, and I just like the fact that...
But they were smart enough not to adopt them into the country. It worked out good for the Puerto Ricans, and it worked out good for the Americans.
Right, so at some level...
Cuba is the other Caribbean country that kind of got screwed by the Americans.
Well, that whole nationalization and the fact that Castro, Kennedy, if you think about this, right, Kennedy was fighting Castro. We've been through more presidents than you've been through wives in that time period. And yet, the strategy of, well, because you know, at some point, right? It had to be from about 1980 something until now, right? Well, don't worry, he'll be dead in a couple of years, and then that was our national policy vis-a-vis Cuba, for all intents and purposes. We'll just wait Castro out, and instead, that guy, unlike Hugo Chavez, who apparently did not have the longevity gene, he's just hung on now, and now he's got his brother running the show. And I'm not saying that they haven't progressed a little bit, but it's just funny. Like you know, it's sort of like the 35-year-old woman who marries the 75-year-old guy for his money and figures, by the time she's 45, she'll be traveling the world and have all his wealth. And of course, he lives to 103, and then finally dies, and now she's 55 or 60, and she lost her youth. Maybe she got his money, but you had to know every year she kept thinking, well, he's probably going to check out this year, so I need to just continue in this farce of a marriage. And that's what I feel about Cuba. We've just been waiting and waiting and waiting for something to happen, and of course nothing's had. And had we actually just recognized that the man may live forever, we may have developed a slightly different strategy besides simply saying, if you can get your feet on American soil, you get permanent residency. That seemed to be our whole policy.
I think we're the communists messed up there because people needed to buy sugar. And they needed to buy the cash crops that they exported, tobacco, other things. And, when you nationalized and turned against the United States, there's no longer a market for that stuff.
Right.
And that's what hurt.
And of course,
there is, but it's remote and it's expensive to get the products there, and, their imports are not very good.
And of course, our version of sugar, by the way, I just go nuts about this, that, who's was it Rubio, right, who won down in Florida, the Hispanic gentleman who was going to become the president of the United States at some point for the Republicans, Marco Rubio. And even Rubio is the, quote, Tea Party senator. The very first thing he does is vote to renew the sugar tariff protections that double the price of sugar here in America. We wouldn't be eating so much damn corn syrup if we didn't have these high sugar tariffs. But, of course, Archer Daniels Midland and Cargill and those boys are just happy as punch that they can continue to grow more corn and sell more corn because we don't want to let foreigners ship their sugar in here. But, hey, I digress.
No, I think that's important, and I think that can circle right back around to NASCAR.
Yeah.
Because I think if you watch a lot of NASCAR, you probably eat a lot of sugar products, probably a lot of corn syrup and products.
Well, NASCAR certainly is right around the middle belt of America. Yeah, the burgeoning.
If you like NASCAR, I can say this for certain: you probably like shitty beer.
Well, based on the official beer of the NFL, you probably like shitty beer if you watch football too.
Budweiser.
Yeah, and then Coors Light and Budweiser and Michelob. I go nutty. I go to restaurants and I'll say, so what do you have on tap? And the girl or guy, but I don't sound like sexist, but the wait person says, Coors Light, Bud Light, Budweiser. I'm not sure what else we have. I think maybe Sam Adams. But I want to be like, okay, could you just for once just say, we have no good beer on tap, and if we do, we're going to tell you about it last, but I probably aren't sure what it is because I've never actually served it before, so it's probably skunked anyhow. I just feel like that's how they should handle it in some restaurants. Now, on the other hand, here in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, if you want good beer, we've got the Market Cross, which has a great selection of beer, and then the hidden selection of beer in Carlisle, besides the Gingerbread Man, who also has a decent selection of beer, is the North Hanover Grill in Carlisle. They actually have a very eclectic and tasty beer selection there.
So do they have the live video feed from Williams Grove dirt track races in there on Saturday nights?
No, they do not. They did not, and that's probably why they have decent beer. I
was trying to show the correlation there.
I drove by Williams Grove the other night, actually last night on my way back from Dillsburg. My son had a birthday party down on a road called Spend a Buck, which is I couldn't figure out why the hell who would name a road Spend a Buck, right?
Horse racing.
Well, right. So I'm driving down the road and I see First Road Secretariat, and then I'm like, okay, I got it.
And the lights on. It's like Beavis and Butthead with the match, like strikes the match, and finally the match lights up.
Exactly. I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, what the hell's a spend the buck? I mean, that doesn't make it easy to sell the houses out here, does it? Anyhow, I mentioned that I come by Williams Grove, and of course I heard the cars racing out there, and of course I just thought it was interesting that this NASCAR thing popped up on my radar, and when I was that close to Williams Grove, I had no interest whatsoever in stopping in and checking it out. By the way, none.
You should actually. It's a cultural experience.
Well, I was at a dirt track race to serve papers on a guy years ago when I was in law school. Some lawyer had me go serve a divorce on a guy who was working in the pit crew, and that was the only way they knew to find him because he'd left home and nobody knew where he was, but they were damn sure he would be with his pit crew at Silver Spring Racetrack, which of course is now the Wegmans.
Right.
But it's just funny, right? Like nobody knows where this guy's going to be, but the one place we know he's going to be is, so, here I am, like, I can't even believe how loud it is when you're that close. The closest...
Well, that's one of those...
yeah, go ahead.
You're from Pennsylvania when... That's one of those... Pennsylvania...
Right.
You were talking earlier about how you can identify a true Pennsylvanian or how Pennsylvanians are...
If you know where Port Royal and Williams Grove are... if you know where Port Royal and Williams Grove are... then
sure.
If you know those two towns, then I can tell you exactly what you do for a hobby or what you like to do. And I'm not making fun of that. I mean, hey, if people want to do their dirt track racing, that's probably where Dwayne is tonight, by the way. Since he hasn't called in yet, I assume he's out. He may be...
he's a lawnmower racing guy.
By the way...
I've seen the pictures.
717-916-5189. Actually, Don, I think somebody on one of his relatives was posting on his Facebook page when he was saying something about the show. They were saying, "Is this another one of your conspiracy theories?" And I was like,
spot him, buddy.
I was like, "Oh man, poor Dwayne."
I know, but it's fun. It's all in good fun, right? It's all just sharing the love.
Exactly. Wait, I think I might have attracted him to the group.
I just wish some of your Facebook people would understand that.
Dwayne, is that you, buddy?
Yeah, you made me do it.
I knew you might call in if we talked about you.
I didn't want to let you down. You know what I mean?
By the way, you can tell a radio show really has a large reach when we have like people we talk about. Like this is like coffee talk. I told you so. Like The View, like we talk to the same four people. That's actually, I'm sure there's 1,000 other people listening, but I'm just going to talk about Dwayne tonight.
Actually, Carl, you did pretty good tonight so far.
Oh, I'm getting good numbers.
What's your viewership up to?
I don't know. I see when I'm in this panel here. When I'm in this panel here, I can just see the time on the show, and my voice causing the little things, green lights to go up or something. So I don't know. I don't get real time numbers. I mean, I guess I could figure out a way to do that. I'm just more worried in making sure that my feed is live and that we don't have any dropped or problematic things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need a crew, Carl.
So, yeah. Hey, and we haven't dropped anybody yet tonight. Did I say we have no technical flaws whatsoever?
It's been awesome. Technically flawless.
Technically flawless. Content weak as ever, but technically flawless. We're going to get all three things. We're going to get good content and good technical, and then production value. We did have music at the beginning. I remember to do the music at the beginning of the show tonight. So, and of course I'll fade out with music again.
I'll tell you that music kind of intoxicating too. Like,
you do.
Maybe I'm just intoxicated. But
get that out. Yeah. I find the music kind of intoxicating with a beer or 3 or 5. Tomorrow's a work day, by the way, just in case you guys don't remember.
For who?
A little hint.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Little hint. I have to work, man. I got to work on Mondays.
Well, you have a job? I work.
I do have a job. I'm working in the logistics industry these days. Getting things from A to B. So it's a long story.
Are you working at FedEx? Trucks at FedEx?
Now I'm actually growing marijuana in a field and then driving it.
Well, that'd probably be a lot more lucrative.
I really am. I am. And because I know that the law enforcement people obviously are monitoring my podcast. I'm sure of that. So, the field, it's 100 miles. You go out the turnpike 100 miles. You take the first exit and you're right after 100 miles. Drive 20 miles out into the countryside and wait there, and you'll see the field, okay? And take a helicopter if you want. Anyhow.
I didn't know you were lying, Carl, because no lawyer is going to get his fingernails dirty doing that kind of work.
That's true.
You found my field, Carl.
Yeah, I found your field. That's right.
God, you found my field. What are you doing out looking for my field, man?
This is a terrible year for law enforcement. Let me explain something to you guys. What happens is when they do their marijuana stuff, I've been told this by a few guys over the years, and I believe it to be true. So I'll just repeat what some state police officers have told me. When you fly the helicopter out over the fields and the drought is on, magically the marijuana crop is well irrigated, right? Because in the middle of nowhere, all the fields are brownish, and then all of a sudden you have some lush green area. It's because they take really good care of it because of the value of the crop. So in years when the drought is high, it's very easy to spot the marijuana because it tends to look irrigated when nothing else does. This year, obviously, as you know, the summer has not been a particularly moist one, but it's not been particularly dry either. So I suspect that it's a little harder to spot the marijuana this time of year than usual. By the way, how mild has this summer been, which just proves there is no global warming?
Do you realize, Carl, this is supposed to be the dog days of August.
Yeah, this is the hottest summer on record. Wait, it's the Arctic Polar Express. It's Al Gore's plane actually caused the jet stream.
That's called climate change, not global warming, Carl.
I know. Jeez. Well, they changed the name. After it didn't get warmer, they changed it to climate change. Yeah, and
that's only funny between you and Dwayne.
Listen, man, I have I have done everything I can to limit my methane production. Okay, I refuse to work on the CO2.
I know where you stand on it, Carl. I'm not holding it against you.
And listen,
I still like it, Carl.
Like I say, Al Gore's plane probably pulled the jet stream a little too far south on one of his many jaunts back and forth. Which reminds me, I always go to my gourd about this stuff. The climate change people, right? Do they not watch TV? Do they not go skiing? I always like an environmentalist who tells me you got to change the way we do things, and then you find out they go skiing, right? Have you ever thought of I love to ski, by the way, so I don't feel like, since I'm a skier, I can call somebody a skier, if that makes sense, if it sounds familiar to you. Well, I go skiing and I see people, and then I talk to them, and they're like hippie environmentalists, and I would be like, dude, this is the single greatest waste of energy in the history of the world. This whole operation, they've got an outdoor pool. They got a swim-in, swim-out pool that they're keeping at 80 degrees, so your butt can swim around outside in a 0-degree weather. And then you go, and they use energy and carbon to drag your ass up the hill so you can ski back down it. But they see no problem with that, right? There's no ski mountain needs to shut down in order to stop its CO2 emissions. So I don't know. I find human beings to be fascinating because even if there is global warming, obviously most people don't really care about it, right?
Well, it's a slow process. It's not going to affect a lot of people, especially some of the older people in the crowd. They're going to be dead and gone before anything really significant changes. But just to be absolutely accurate, Carl, it's actually global oceanic temperature that's important and what's changing.
Well,
the weather is not as affected by it as global ocean temperatures, and that's really what's going to cause the problems down the road.
I'm curious about that. We'll see, because there's a lot of models on ocean temperature and what's really going on. And the answer is, you're right. I mean, obviously, a huge thermal sink, and the question is, when it fills up, what happens? But here's the answer. I'm 40 now, 41. In another 50 years, if the ocean's too hot, what the hell do I care? Right? I mean, who cares?
Oh, yeah, it'd be comfortable to swim in New Jersey for once.
Right. Actually, swimming in New Jersey, don't you have to worry about the hypodermic needles? Or wait, was it that the hypodermic needle started showing up at the exact same time that somebody was trying to get an incinerator approved, and there was no approval for the incinerator because people were worried about pollution? But then when needles started showing up on the shore, people became concerned that medical waste needed to be incinerated, and suddenly the incinerator got approved.
Was Obama involved in that? It had to have been Obama.
Well, and Dwayne and Don, I say in all seriousness, Stephen King wrote a book about the Kennedy assassination where a guy goes back in time and tries to stop the assassination. In fact, he's ultimately successful, in case you haven't read the book yet. Or maybe he's not. Maybe I shouldn't tell you guys what actually happens. But let's just say it's a great Stephen King book. But at the end, Stephen King does a thing and says, okay, well, what really happened? By the way, I think it was one guy. And he said, I did all this research for this book, and I read all this stuff. And Stephen King says that he believes, and this goes back, Don, to your point, that most people cannot accept that Kennedy was killed by one person, because to accept that world history can be changed by one lone actor, that so many important things can be changed, just doesn't sit well with a human being. In other words, we don't want to believe that random chance can have such a great effect on the outcome of things, because we, of course, believe in control. And so it's a rejection of assuming that there had to be a grand conspiracy is a rejection of the idea that we have little control over what actually happens at the end of the day in world politics and those sorts of things.
That's actually really deep, Carl.
Yeah, and
I agree with you on that.
And I understand that. And so I like to say, on the other hand, having been involved in several conspiracies and cover-ups over the years,
that was probably like a wife swapping thing or something.
Right. No, and of the public, by the way, and of the public. Someday I'll write a book and I'll reveal the 3 or 4 occasions in which I colluded with prosecutors to mislead the press and the public about various aspects and events in a case. And we're talking about cases where we're homicides and things like that. I'm not talking about the Jerry Sandusky case, of course, but what of course not. But what I am talking about is cases where, and of course now, the fingerprints are very light, so somebody may say, "Oh, well, that's not really how it went down. I don't have a way to prove it per se, right?" Because obviously, when we're jerry rigging how it's going to come out. But I remember one time, and I'll just give you an example, where the police officers who were involved in arrest said to me, they're like, this is such crap. And I was like, hey, your boss is fine with it, right? And that was the prosecutor. And they're like, yeah, but they were laughing about it because they're just like, how does this even happen? How does this guy become, okay when he's really the bad guy? My point on this is, at my level of existence, these kinds of conspiracies were normal enough where the public was actively misled about what was really happening in a case. And in a couple of the cases, judges were involved too. So you got the judge, the prosecutor, and the defense attorney basically hoodwinking the public. Okay. Knowing that stuff happened at my level, I got to believe at the more sophisticated level, it happens quite a bit too. So while I don't believe that everything is a conspiracy, and I'm willing to accept random chances quite often, and as Tom Clancy would tell you in his books, even the best laid conspiracies unravel because of random chance. I'm willing to say that random chance has a lot to do with how things flow, but conspiracies have just as much.
Well, I would say that the conspiracies that a lawyer would come in contact with aren't very successful ones. Right? You got caught, or something got caught, or. Well,
no, and I'm talking about. So let me give you an example.
So imagine how can you?
Let me give you an example.
Take that to the next level. Okay.
Right. Let me give you an example. So, a guy gets shot and killed, right? And it's a gang hit. But the federal government needs this guy to testify. This was one I was only tangentially involved in. I wasn't involved in any of this operation. I just have all the documents that prove it happened. So the federal government is involved in it because they want to prosecute some people, and they need this guy's testimony, so they're going to load him into witness protection, right? So in the meantime, he's been charged with homicide because he was caught red-handed blasting this other guy away, basically. So 2 years later, they take it into court, and in open court, they have him plead guilty on the basis that while he was cleaning his gun, he accidentally shot this other guy. and it's involuntary manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter, and agrees to do 2 to 4 in the state prison, right? Now, you can't find that guy in state prison, but if you were in the press galley and in the courtroom that day, the judge, the prosecutor, and the defense attorney were all in on changing this guy's charges around because they didn't want to say that they were letting a guy get away with murder, right? So they had to change it so that when the newspaper wrote it up, it wasn't murder anymore. It was a gun cleaning accident. So,
I never had a gun go off during cleaning.
I'm just saying, right, and shoot somebody else in the head.
Right.
Gangland style, like a professional hit. My point is, though, you look at it and you're like, wow, they've got the state prosecutor, the state defense attorney, and the state judge all in on it, and you got federal agents meeting with all of them to go over, like, here's what we're going to say happened, and here's how we're going to present it, and he's going to be remanded to prison, and then he's going to get transferred out of prison, and nobody's ever going to see him again. So I'm just saying,
that would be interesting reading.
Yeah. I'm saying, and that was one that I was aware of because the guy who he testified against had the documents, because the government had to disclose this, because they had to disclose this secret deal with this guy to this guy lawyers. So, like I say, I was tangentially involved, but I saw the actual documents myself, and I wouldn't have believed it if you hadn't shown them to me. You know what I'm saying? But I can think of a couple other ones where we definitely shaped what the public knew, and that was with the government prosecutor. So I always say this: when you think you read in the newspaper that this is the really bad guy and this is the really good guy, or this is what happened, this stuff gets cooked all the time. Sometimes
can you say media bias?
Sometimes by media bias, but the media isn't even in on this stuff. That what they get fed by a district attorney or a prosecutor may or may not be the truth, and it may or may not be the truth with the consent of the attorneys of the defendant, and it may or may not be the truth with the consent of the judge presiding over the case. I remember
plausible examples, though. Some of the things that some of these Alex Jones people come up with, they're highly implausible. You know what I mean?
My third cousin's on the water board, or is on the sewer commission or whatever, and therefore, the township supervisors are going to screw my enemies. That kind of theory that people have, I never completely understand. And again, it's sort of a way of explaining the world. Trying to understand why things happen the way they do. People often want explanation. You have to learn to accept that explanation is often going to be absent, right?
Right.
I think world's easier to live in that way, if you can accept it.
Ignorance is bliss.
I just told somebody the other day that their problem was, of course I always tell people what their problem is. They didn't tell me what my problem is too, but I said to this person, your problem is you don't like questions with no right answer. In other words, this person was confounded by some questions which would be very simple to answer because there are no wrong answers. But the fact that there's no wrong answers means there's no right answers either. Or no answer is particularly better than another. And this was disturbing to this individual. That's why they were having difficulty answering the questions, because they want certainty, right? And if something has a lot of right answers or better answers and worse answers, how are you certain you have the best answer? And the answer is there's no way to be certain because there's no objective measure of that. But it was something that they were having difficulty with because they weren't able to ascertain what the best answers were. That's just a mindset. All right, guys, I'm going to let you go because I'm ready to get the hell out of here.
Adios, amigo.
All right, man. Thanks for listening to Rominger Radio. I've been listening to Carl Rominger. We'll be back Wednesday at 8 p.m. as always. And we'll be back, the Sunday after that at 8 p.m. And in the meantime, you go to carlrominger.com or check me out on Facebook. And as always, it's an honor to have you listen. If you do listen, I only ask that you take the Spreaker podcast and share it on Facebook or Twitter if you can. Try to get some more followers and some more calls. And share it with your friends and encourage them to listen and call in. And I'll be looking forward to it. All right, 717-916-5189 is the number you should write down for future use. And again, we'll be live right now, Sundays at 8 p.m. and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. And we'll be expanding the hours in the fall as the weather gets worse. Adios, amigos.